views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Hey there, welcome to the Bronx Buzz. This is BronxNet's program that talks to reporters and writers and journalists and editors and filmmakers and photographers. And this evening we've got a great show because we're going to talk to a really good reporter who has some really interesting things to report, and also to a photographer who is kind of a legend in Bronx journalism, but is also a photographer, and he has some great photos that will expand your horizon just a little bit. But let's start out right now and say good evening to Rebecca Lewis from City and State New York, one of their fine staff reporters there. Nice to have you back with us, Rebecca.
Thanks for having me on. It's always a pleasure to be invited.
And I'm going to just start with this, and I told you a little bit before and let people see it. This is a cover story that you did about Lindsay Boylan, and I was particularly fond of it. For people who don't know, and you're going to talk more about it, Ms. Boylan was the first accuser of Governor Cuomo in the sexual harassment suits and contentions. And I was not aware of this. I'm sorry, because I cover the Bronx. She's running for Manhattan Borough President. What an interesting figure this is in the city and the state. So here's somebody with major complaints that could, depending what happens, bring down the governor of the state of New York, and she's running for Manhattan Borough President. And I didn't know. So that's the beauty of great reporting for getting me into it. So let's just talk about Ms. Boylan and your work with her, your interview with her, and how do you balance these two things of, she challenges the governor and she's a legitimate candidate for Manhattan Borough President.
Well, yeah, it was, she's a candidate for Manhattan Borough President. She had actually previously been a candidate for Congress. She ran against Representative Jerry Nadler back in 2020. That does make her a little bit more, I don't want to say more, but sort of an interesting figure. It kind of sets her apart a little bit from some of the other women who've come forward and said that they've experienced sexual harassment or sexual misconduct at the hands of the governor. And I just talked to her a little bit about that, given the fact that she was already something of a public figure, and how that impacted her decision to come forward. If it made it any easier. It's never easy for any woman to speak publicly about, experiences like this. But she was telling me that to some degree, yes, that she was a public figure. She had a following. She felt like, she was able to, and that people would listen to her. But she also acknowledged at the same time that she's a public figure, and that, kind of opened herself up to retaliation, as, reporting kind of played that out. Almost as soon as she first tweeted, there were leaks of supposed personnel documents about her that went out to several major outlets. Later on, there was reporting about calls being made to former staffers after she first, tweeted her and
Unbelievable.
A letter that was reportedly being drafted that never actually saw the light of day about, her and her allegations. And, I haven't seen any reporting, haven't heard about anything kind of similar for any of the other women who've come forward who aren't really public figures, who haven't been in the political limelight.
So here's my question, and maybe it's a terrible question to ask. We've had male figures running for office, Scott Stringer, who had been accused, and he's running for office. This is the first time in my memory that somebody who openly accused a current elected official, not to mention the powerful governor of the state of New York, and she's running for office. Do you think it affects the voters at all? Or is that, because I'm unfamiliar with the race because I cover the Bronx and I don't really watch that. What are your thoughts about that? Is this a factor in the race, or is she able to separate that and her political agenda?
I think it is. I think it is a factor just in that she she made a pretty big splash in the news, and her name is probably out there. Her name is probably known. Interviews with her often touch on these allegations that she's made, and she is, kind of a known figure for standing up to a governor that many Democrats in New York will probably, maybe have split opinions, but certainly it's not an unpopular, unknown opinion that some people consider him a bully. So I think that, it's not something that I think directly impacts her race. She certainly has plenty of local issues that she's running on, um, in a very a pretty stellar field of candidates. Honestly, it's I've done some reporting on the race, and it's a lot of good candidates in that race. Hard to say who exactly is going to come out on top in the end. A lot of strong candidates. Um, but it's when you have someone who's made kind of a big news splash, whose name is out there for any reason, especially a
Yeah, it's like
reason like
all
taking on the
publicity is,
governor.
yeah, all publicity is good publicity in that way. Not to say that this is a good thing. Anyway, I just I wanted to acknowledge it. I wanted to represent it. People check out City and State New York. Look for Rebecca Lewis's profile on Lindsay Boylan. It's a fascinating read, and it really tells a story that I've been covering New York City politics, Bronx politics, mostly, of course, for 26 years. I've never really heard of this dynamic, this dual thing going on. And so, thank you, Rebecca, for bringing it to us. The other thing, as you know, that I want to talk about, and this really is mind opening, and that is we hear about all the goals and of New York State, that they want to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 85% by 2050. They want to be 100% carbon free in electricity by 2040, and 70% of electricity has to come from renewable sources by 2030. Your reporting, based on a research or a study that was done, says, you know what? Talk is cheap. And we may not get there. So why don't you evaluate the goals and what the reality is of us actually achieving what the legislature has laid out?
Mhm. Well, New York has a history of setting ambitious climate goals. And I've reported in the past, after the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act passed in 2019, that the state hasn't always been super good at hitting those goals in a timely fashion. And the goals that were set in 2019 are certainly they are, and were, and I believe still are, nation leading. It was national news when this bill passed. It was the state was lauded. These were really ambitious goals that would require a lot of work to hit, but are certainly doable. And then a New York Public Interest Research Group, NIPERG, put out a report near the end of session because this information hasn't been easily compiled anywhere else. If you're willing to look through a whole bunch of reports, state reports and energy reports and press releases from the governor, you could find this information, but it could be a little bit hard to dig through this stuff. They put out a report and said basically, this is where we're at. We're not doing, in some areas we're doing okay. In other areas we have a lot of work to do.
Is this a matter of money? Is it a matter of the legislature looking at the budget and saying, okay, let's get serious? Or is it
It's
infrastructure? I mean, or is it education of the public about recycling and
it's a
other
little bit
things?
of everything. It's not just the legislature's job, the agencies, the governor, everyone has a role to play, but I think I was focused a little bit more on the legislature because the session had just ended and there were climate activists and environmental organizations and groups and advocates who weren't especially pleased with how the legislature handled climate issues this year. It was kind of a mixed bag on broader environmental issues. They did pass some things that like the League of Conservation Voters praised, and Environmental Advocates New York praised some of their environmental bills that they passed having to do with toxic chemicals and things of the
Right.
like. But in terms of climate, in order to meet the goals of the 2019 bill, the CLCPA, it will require some bold legislation. And for the past 2 years, that hasn't happened. A lot of
Hmm.
people were hoping that one particular bill, it is the Climate and Community Investment Act. Yes, I got those in the right order. It's
All
two
right.
C's.
That's
The
fine.
Climate and Community Investment Act, which would have basically instituted like a carbon tax on big polluters and use those funds to help reach the climate goals, because there
We
will be a
need
monetary
we need
need.
so much infrastructure to do this. I mean, and we're talking about electricity infrastructure, which of course means dealing with Con Ed and reforming how they do their work and how they deliver electricity. And it's just so massive. Me, it's going to cost a lot of money. It's going to cost a lot of money, and we're going to need a lot of infrastructure because Con Ed is going to have to redo how they handle their all of the delivery of electricity, how they generate electricity. I mean, this requires those things. To me, the bottom line: bold leadership. You have got to, and we're talking about in the Assembly with Carl Hastie, in the Senate with Andrea Stewart Cousins, and of course the governor. We'll see what happens in the future. What his status is. He was, as we know, a weakened governor during this during the last budget negotiation. But to do this, you're going to need somebody or people to stand up and say, we want to make this happen, right?
Certainly, yes. And that's why some climate activists and advocates and organizations have been disappointed that there was such big action, such bold action in 2019 to set these goals, and that it's the past 2 years has been relatively little action from the legislature to actually meet them. This is everything. This is infrastructure. This is offshore wind. This is replacing cars with electric cars, and redesigning our grid. It's everything. If we want to meet the various so many different goals, ambitious, bold
Right.
goals, every sector needs to be part of this.
And one thing which we now don't have time because we gotta end and talk to our friend Bob Kappstatter, who's going to be delivering some photographs. The question of how to replace the electricity delivery that you're losing from Indian Point is a whole other thing, because it appears that we're going to be behind the 8 ball when it comes to that. The next time when you write about that, I'm going to have you back and we'll talk about that. How about that? Does that work?
That's a big one.
Yeah, that is a big one, because they say it's going to put us back from a delivery standpoint. Good luck. Rebecca Lewis, I told you I love both of the stories we talked about, but this cover story about Lindsay Boylan was fantastic. Thanks for keeping us in touch, and thanks for doing great work at City and State New York.
And thanks for having me on. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you. We're going to take a break. As I said, Bob Kappstatter, everybody in the Bronx knows him, former Daily News editor, and now a photographer. And he has some great photos of another place. You'll find out. Don't go away.
We know that people are dealing with the health crisis, but there's also a lot of food insecurity.
We're giving out healthy food options, and that's what's key here.
If you're a senior, you have a disability, they'll actually deliver meals to you.
The residents are anxious, they're worried, they're scared, they want to be tested.
When things were happening in our community and we couldn't get the help.
There's almost a presumption of criminality that attaches to your skin color.
The site will prioritize those who are at highest risk in the population.
If you feel symptoms and you'd like to visit one of these COVID-19 testing sites here in the Bronx, you may call the State Health Department's hotline.
Important to note about this site is no reservations are needed. This is a walk-in clinic.
A lot of us are out of work and looking for something to do.
We have the machinery and the skills to make large scales of these masks and gowns.
Take care of your people. It's going to go way further than we actually can understand.
Right now, employees like myself are just adjusting to the new reality.
Reporting from BronxNet. We built a media network for you.
BronxNet TV.
Come learn in your new state-of-the-art studios at Lehman College.
At Mercy College.
And coming soon to the South Bronx in the Hub.
Inspire with your stories, culture, history.
Your Bronx on BronxNet.
Engage with us.
Connect with us at your channels and at BronxNet.tv.
Learn, engage, inspire. BronxNet TV.
From the Bronx
to the world.
BronxNet.
back with you on the Bronx Buzz. It is always a pleasure to spend a little time with my buddy Bob Kappstatter. We call him Cappy. You can call him Bob. Other people call him.
Don't call me late for dinner.
Don't certainly don't do that. He's a former Daily News editor and media consultant. And to my state of mind, aside from being my friend, he's also a great photographer, and that's what we're going to show this evening. Let's just talk about why North Carolina. You come back to New York with some great photos. Why North Carolina?
Well, in my late teens, I lived up in those mountains in Western Carolina, and they still hold a big place in my heart. I was in a little town, 5,000 people, way up in the mountains, and it was my happy days. And I have family down there.
So you went down recently and visited, brought your camera.
Yeah, I've been back a bunch of times. I always loved going back down there, obviously seeing my kin and being back wrapped up in those mountains. They just envelop you when you're down there.
So let's start right there.
Folks with those old-timey ways. I love them.
These photographs, so let's start. There are two of the Blue Ridge Mountains, and they are so spectacular. It's almost as if you phonied up the pictures, and they're like paintings.
Okay, here we go.
So what do you think?
Okay. All right, first one.
This
is at the Cowie Mountain Overlook up on the Blue Ridge Parkway, and that light coming through the clouds. That's called crepuscular light, which is when the sun is just set, but it shines through the mountains and clouds. It just casts this wonderful ray of light over the mountains.
Did you wait for that moment, or was it? It's like
I froze various parts of my anatomy off waiting to get that shot.
That doesn't come across in the photograph. And the second one is literally like a painting.
Well,
and what is this?
Yeah, this was from my latest trip. I was down there in early June, and same location, went back. This seems to be a great spot for photographers to shoot stuff there. This is why the early Irish and Scottish settlers called them the Blue Ridge Mountains. The Blue Ridges of those mountains.
Just spectacular. Did you funky up the camera to do that picture?
No, not at all. This is all natural.
Wow. So you're going to give me the address so I can go down.
In the camera.
The next thing, I mean, this is the kind of nature you can appreciate is a waterfall, a little stream or something.
Oh, this is on the Calisaja River down in Macon County, where my kin live, a little town called Franklin. This was in the autumn, a couple of years. The foliage is just magnificent.
And is it the kind of water that you can go traipsing through, or it's too dangerous?
Well, yeah, you can there. Yeah, there's a lot of trout fishing goes on down there. Yeah, and there's even a couple of swimming holes.
Wow.
Too along the river. You just got to pick the right season for it.
Which leads us to the next photo of these gorgeous waterfalls. I mean, is this the kind of thing? Because like at the base of these, you can go swimming in there, or is it
actually? I was going to put a photo in of some swimmers sliding down the boulders. They call it bust your butt.
I was going to say you could break a tibia right there. I was hoping that you were not going to put a photo of Bob Kappstatter in a bathing suit, but that's okay.
Anyway, all right, let's move along here, folks.
Move along to the next photo. Now I actually love this photo. And one of the things I love about being a Bronxite and love this photo, it's just a whole other world. This is going on out there. This is
it's country.
This garage.
It's country.
And now, so this is just an old.
You know what? It's your standard. It's your standard old weathered barn with a rusted pickup truck parked next to it, shot. And it's kind of a little sad this trip because I hadn't been down for a year or two, and what used to be country down there in a lot of places has now become suburbs with all these housing developments coming up. A lot of people retiring from the West, from up in Washington, Oregon, New York. A lot of retirees. Housing prices are going nuts down there.
And so this is something that is almost like
a lot of farms and country scenes are just, they're fading away.
Wow.
And I had to look a little extra hard this trip to find some good stuff. I found some great people. They're coming up on the show.
Yeah,
So
but I just love this. It's and your pictures, your sense of perspective are always just unbelievably
well
great.
my heart's in all of them, because that's what they stir up in me when I see these scenes. I say, this is a picture. Gotta take it.
Cappy, that's beautiful. From a guy who was a tough reporter.
Tough old tabloid newspaper guy. Yeah. Somebody once to accuse me of being a crusty marshmallow. I won't fight
that's
it.
Good. That's good. I'm going to keep that in mind.
Okay.
All right.
Into the next one.
The next one is this church. Go ahead, talk about it.
This is the Gold Mine Baptist Church, established 1861. I'm sure it's not the original building, but this was on just another beautiful autumn day off a little side road that I just discovered. I said, I'm going to take this side road, see where it takes me. And boom.
And now, did you get out of your car and take that photo?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And for a photo like this, and even the previous one, do you take a bunch of them, or do you nail it the first one?
Oh yeah, I do a bunch. I do different focal lengths. I walk around different angles, and and when I'm going over them, the one that really works, it just sticks out at me. I don't have to do any fancy editing on it. It's just there.
As you know, I'm very partial to your black and white photos. And boy, is this ever a Southern photo? And is this recent?
Yeah.
Is this
this is the June trip. Yeah, this is Ricky Wood. He's 60 years old, a retired iron worker. He lives on Buddy Gap Road out in Otto. And I asked him about, I stopped, I was taking a picture of his barn, which is not in this show. And I said, so what's with the flag? And he said, well, it's not hate, it's heritage. And I said, okay, right. Here's the thing. I drove by this guy's place back in the last election, and he's told me he had lawn signs out for Hillary. He voted for Hillary, and he voted for Biden this time. So,
I don't have any way to resolve that. I'm sorry.
It ain't hate; it's heritage. And it's funny. He also was telling me when he lived over in Maggie Valley, he was pals with a guy named Popcorn Sutton, who was a famous moonshiner.
I gotta get down.
I got to keep telling you the story because I got moonshine connections here. And we're going to go into another.
Let's do that after the show. I want to get all the pictures in.
All right. Okay. How's our timing? How are we doing? Click away.
We're getting
Let's go. Okay. Let's go.
The general store. This again. It's another world. And us in the Bronx. You look at that picture.
Well,
it's just amazing. This guy.
In
the general store.
Talking about moonshine. This is Leon Morgan, who is the current owner of the M.A. Pace General Store in Saluda, established 1899. So it hasn't changed that much. You can still buy bread and milk. You can buy bread and milk, screws, and paint. It's all there in this old store with all this old advertising. And
it makes it worth making the trip to me.
Well, here's the.
But you got to be quick if you're going to tell me about it.
Okay, so I said, listen, where can a guy get a drink in this town? And he says, well, you can't get liquor in Saluda, but if you ask for scorpion juice, folks, they'll fix you right up. Scorpion juice being moonshine.
Yes, I get it. All right, so here's just an altacocker, as we say in.
Yeah.
So just the man that you ran into.
That's Mr. James Sanders, who was 83 in that picture. Unfortunately, he's since passed away, but he just had this great face, and he had this great quote. I still remember it. He said, I've had a hard life. My daddy put me to work when I was 7 on the other end of a cross-cut saw. How can you top?
You can't top that.
I love the people down there. There's so many wonderful people, and just to have to talk with them about their lives.
You have transported us into, I don't want to say another time, but another place. And this next picture, here's a guy who's hunting for bar.
Oh yeah, my bear hunter friend. And I was semi lost on a back mountain road trying to get to shoot some things. And I ran into him and his dogs. And
did he catch any bear? I mean, is he shooting bear? Is that
he was on? Yeah, well, there's a lot of bear hunters down there in the mountains. So, but anyway, so I said, that's a lot of fancy gear you got there. He said, yeah, we got cell phones, GPS on the dogs, and radios. And so what did you do in the old days?
He looked at me and said,
no. What'd you do in the old days?
Yeah.
He said, got lost a lot.
He didn't have his GPS. Yeah.
There you go.
Anyway, this final picture is, I was curious as to why you liked it. We got about 1 minute left. So give me 30 seconds on the picture and then we'll say goodbye.
Okay. Which shot is this again?
This is the an angel statue.
Oh, yes. Thomas Wolfe, who wrote Look Homeward Angel.
Okay.
His father was a stonemason in Asheville, where the book is set. And he carved this statue for the grave of this woman. The statue's in Oakdale Cemetery in Hendersonville. And this has been my quest to get the perfect photo. Every time I'm down there, I'm in that cemetery, shooting her left and right, trying to find the right light. This has been my life quest to get that one.
So we got to run. And the next time you go to North Carolina, you come back with photos. You also have some great photos of the South Bronx, which I know that you post on your social media pages.
Oh, I got one. Well, I don't know. You want to post the one I just put up?
No. I saw the one you put up earlier today. We're not doing that. Anyway, we got to go. Thank you to
happy anniversary, 41 years.
That's it.
What's the secret? Keep your mouth shut and listen.
You took it right out of my mouth. Okay, we got to go. Thank you, Rebecca Lewis, and thank you, Bob Kappstatter, and to Rebecca, our producer, Elliot, our intern, and we'll see you next week. Good night.